Let's talk Switch rumors.
We all love our Switches, and the rumor on the mill has been there's a 4K Switch coming down the pipeline this summer. Let's talk about it today.
That's right, guys. So anyone who is a fan of Nintendo has probably seen the rumor mill circulating in recent months, actually more like a year, recent months, but specifically this past week it has really heated up. Articles from Bloomberg to IGN, big name outlets are reporting that the 4K update for a Nintendo Switch revision is imminent. The rumor states that production is supposed to start for a OLED screen from Samsung in June, meaning the Switch Pro, or as I prefer, Super Switch, would go into mass production in that June-July pipeline.
Leaving it in time for Christmas.
Correct. Well, yeah, it would have to be a big Christmas launch because if everybody knows it's coming, no one's going to want to buy the old Switch, before Christmas and then have to buy a new Switch in January. So
makes sense.
But what do you got here? Let's hear it.
I want it. I need it. I love it. No, so the question I have, which I wanted to bring up, is current Switch hardware, which we have, which I love, is currently what, running 720?
Well, yeah, 720p or 1080p docked, if the games can pull it. It's running an NVIDIA Tegra chipset.
So although I appreciate a lot of companies porting their games over to the Switch, it has been a difficult process. So the question is, are these games going to get re-released in 4K if it does happen?
So here's my theory on that, and I feel like this is a pretty safe bet. I'm assuming it will be up to each individual developer whether or not they want to release a patch to enhance the game. And I say that because, this is still a handheld, okay? Supposedly it's going to have 4K support, but it's not going to be 4K like the PlayStation 5 or the Series X. More than likely, because this is an NVIDIA chipset in the Switch, my bet is it's going to support DLSS, which is deep learning super sampling, which is something that new NVIDIA chipsets support. It's an AI-based deep learning technology that NVIDIA uses to super sample.
Like Skynet?
Yes, Terminator is going to come out. No, but it's used for super sampling resolution. So more than likely what's going to happen is the games are going to be patched to run better, and then the AI behind the scenes is going to super sample each individual frame and push it it's basically an advanced version of upscaling to 4K.
Whoa.
Like, how the PS4 Pro used checkerboard 4K? So it's similar to that, but way more advanced because it's using like a deep learning algorithm to basically figure out what pixels should be colored to what, therefore giving you a 4K image, but one that has been upscaled massively. Anyway, yes, that's kind of the drawn-out version of what you just asked.
I heard a lot of things said, and I like it. That's number one. Number one. What do you got, Steve?
Okay, so tech specs. So the rumor is that the Samsung panel being produced is a 7-inch OLED screen. And that's interesting for two reasons. Number one, the Switch is not a 7-inch screen. It's a 6.1, 6.2?
Okay, so it'd be a larger
6
screen.
point something inch screen. But it's OLED, meaning it's super thin and there's very little bezel to have an OLED panel. So my theory is they're going to keep the exact same dimensions for the Switch. You'll notice on the Switch, the bezel is extremely thick. My thought process is same exact dimensions, but they're going to remove almost the bezel almost entirely and push the screen edge to edge. Because if you were to delete these bezels from around here, you would have a 7-inch screen.
Absolutely.
The speakers down here, but you could push the speakers to the bottom. It doesn't matter. You can fit a 7-inch screen on this Switch.
Now, with it being thinner, could that help with the battery life?
Yeah, because if they keep this in mind, if they want to keep the same hardware, same dock, same Joy-Cons, it has to be essentially the same size. And, it's not a Switch 2, it's a revision. So keeping the hardware is extremely essential. So if you have a paper-thin screen with all that extra space, granted the chipset might be a little bigger, maybe a little bit bigger heatsink, you have a lot of extra room for a bigger battery. Imagine running around with a Super Switch that has a 10-hour battery life when you're playing games, because you're going to have the capacity to put a much higher milliamp battery in there.
I would like that, to be honest. Because I think that's always been the problem with the Switch, where it's like, is it a portable system? Because you get, most 4 hours out of it?
The new version of the Switch, the slightly revised version, has double the battery life. But you know I'm talking about the one that came out like last year, but
Yep.
it's the same, essentially the same, but like a little bit upgraded chipset.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I think you get like 4 to 5 hours in most games.
Now, do you think, with all that fancy talk, I'm thinking 4K TV support, 1080p handheld?
No, because the rumor about the OLED Samsung panel is it's a 720p panel. But here's the kicker about that. People are going to get up in arms about that. Oh, I can't believe Nintendo was pushing a brand new Switch and it's still going to be 720p handheld. But it's going to be 4K on the TV. Why would you bother? Why not make the handheld 1080p? I have another theory on that. 2 theories, actually. So, theory 1. We're dealing with 7 inches of real estate, okay? That's not very big. If you have a 7-inch screen at 720p, that roughly translates to 200, but somewhere between 200 and 205 pixels per inch.
That's a
Okay?
lot of pixels.
On a 65-inch 4K TV, you're talking like under 100 pixels per inch. So the pixel density at 720p at 7 inches is still incredibly high. So it's going to look good. And if it's OLED, here's what matters. Frame rate and the way the screen looks. Who cares if it's 720p if you have insane contrast ratio? Remember, OLED, the blackest of blacks, the brightest of brights. You're talking
It's
about
true.
extremely vivid picture. Very fine pixel density, but if it's an upgraded 4K chipset, all that extra horsepower can push higher frame rate at 720p.
Kind of like now, where some games really do look better in handheld mode than they do in dock mode,
Right.
just because shrinking down the picture
Exactly.
makes it look crisper.
Imagine
Shrinking down the picture makes it look crisper.
Imagine The Witcher 3 on a Super Switch, running at 720p handheld, but at a rock solid 60 FPS.
Woo.
Because right now it struggles to hit 30.
Yes, and
So
it does
would
look
you
great
rather
too.
have a 1080p handheld Super Switch chugging 30 to 50 FPS unlocked, or a 720p OLED screen running Witcher 3 portably locked at 60 FPS? It's a no-brainer.
I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying.
That's all that I've got. You have anything else you want to add?
Just the rumored price point we heard, which is 400 big ones, which I think is 100% worth it. I mean, sign me up for 2 of them already.
Nintendo does not like discounting their products.
No.
They very rarely put their games on sale, especially at retail. The Switch already sells like a hotcake anyway at $300. They probably sold it at a loss for the first year, more than likely, because that's what most hardware manufacturers do. So they're making their money off of it now that it's 4 years in or whatever. They're not going to want to cut the price on that and then set a Super Switch out at the same price.
Right.
So my thing is, they already have the cheap price point, the handheld, the light, $200. They have the $300 version, which is the standard Switch. But if you want to take it up to the next level, kick it into high gear, now you're playing with power, Nintendo power. The Super Switch for $400, which coincidentally happens to be $100 cheaper than the top-of-the-line Xbox and PlayStation.
Absolutely. And they might announce at the same time with Breath of the Wild 2, which would be the first huge game supported in 4K on it. Oh, and a Power Glove coming with it. All these ideas. Let's sign up today.
It's like that meme. It prints money! Cue Shigeru Miyamoto with the money popping out of his
I
mouth.
have so much of it. You can have some of ours.
Well, guys, that's it for this episode of The Rumor Mill. And by that episode, I mean we've never done this before, but we just did now. Haha. What do you guys think about the Super Switch Switch revision?
I'm calling it
4K
now.
Switch.
New Super Switch Brothers U. That's what they're going to call it.
It is not going to be called that. But sound
You
off
heard
in
it
the
here
comments down below for what you guys think. A big shout out to all of our patrons who are appearing right here.
Wow.
And
awesome.
another shout out to our current sponsor, Stream Hype Music. Link in the description below. Check out all of their totally free audio tracks to put in your YouTube videos or on your streams.
We got a sponsor.
For the Adventurers Guild, I'm Steve.
Still Jesse.
And we'll catch you with the next rumor.
Rumor has it.
Rumor has it. Rumor has it. Cue those credits. Oh God, get out of here.